Welcome to Disrupt and Discuss with your hosts, E and Casey. A Blue Shade Ventures production brought to you by It's Just ETV and My Herba by the Fitness Collective. Now, without any further ado, disrupt and discuss.
Hey everyone.
Hey.
Welcome to another episode of Disrupt and Discuss. I am E.
And I am KC.
And together, you know the deal. We're D&D.
That's right.
And today, you guys are we're gonna dive into a topic that means a lot to us, and it's incredibly important. We're gonna deal with another mental health issue or mental health awareness, but this one's going to be with regards to first responders. The episode title is Behind the Badge, the Silent Battle of First Responders Mental Health. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this one. If you're a first responder, just want to say personally, thank you for your service. But we wanted to dive into this conversation a little bit and just talk about the mental health of people who are our first responders. And these are people who run towards danger when everyone else is running away from danger. Like our firefighters, our police officers, the EMTs, and more. They are our everyday essential workers. They are our everyday heroes. But behind their, some would say bravery, or some would say behind the badge, or behind what they do on a daily basis, there's this silent battle that many of them are fighting with their mental health. And so that's what we want to discuss.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. Just sidebar, I grew up with a first responder. My children are first responders. So that having a parent as a first responder, when you grow up like that's all you know. But when you have children that are first responders, it hits a little different for a lot of reasons. First of all, you remember raising them, and you know how like the turkeys, when they look up at the rain and they don't have enough sense to move their head and they drown.
Right.
You remember your kid at that point, teaching them how to do different things. And then you're like, well, damn, you're a first responder. People listen to you. You help people. You couldn't even help yourself.
Right.
But then there's this pride knowing that, well, damn, maybe I did do something right, because it's all about me, right? But yeah, but then again, like you had said before, the whole mental health aspect of it, again, as a parent of first responders, you are concerned about that.
Yep.
So it's a mixed bag of emotions. Most people see first responders as invincible, but the truth is their jobs are incredibly stressful and can take a huge toll on their mental health, their mental well-being, just who they are, period. I've read some staggering statistics lately that really opened my eyes to how serious this issue. Again, as a protective parent, that's one thing. But then when you start reading statistics, you're like, what the fuck did they get into? I remember my dad used to say, why couldn't you just be a school teacher? Little do you know, Dad, guess what happens now being teachers in schools? So there is no safe place. And then on the flip side, they are trained in these situations. So in some odd way, you feel safer knowing that they can handle themselves. It's just a weirdly weird place to be in sometimes. And I never really talked about that with my kids, but they're like, oh God, Mom, here you go again. What do they use? They put in a 20 on a 10. But these are your babies. As old as they might be, they're your babies.
Right. So all you see is, like you just said, that's my baby. You don't see them as these adults that have taken on responsibilities. But like you said, to your point, you've raised them well, that they actually wanted to do something like this. And if anybody know Casey, she is, like you said, a daughter of a police officer. So she reacts to things a certain way, you guys. Like, I'm going to give you one.
Oh, God, you got a story on me, right?
When we meet up anywhere, we usually meet up at the coffee shop, or if we go hiking or something like that, Casey will park and she will back into the parking space. Anywhere we are, she's backing in. And that's her being raised by a police officer. If she has to move quickly shake the spot. She don't have time to back out and turn. She just wants to take off. So that, that is one thing that I have learned from her with regards to there's certain things that just stuck with her because being raised by a police officer.
Yep. Stay ready so
Yes.
you don't have to get ready.
You have to-
So many other little things that dear old dad had taught me over the years that I have not forgotten.
Sticks with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about these statistics. These statistics, from what I recall, with regards to first responders, right? They are much higher for risk of mental health, those mental health disorders. And you'll be like, well, what kinds? PTSD. And everybody knows what PTSD is. It's post-traumatic stress syndrome, post-traumatic stress
Disorder.
disorder. Thank you.
Right? Okay.
The D. We're trying
Too
to make
much
this
coffee for
lighthearted
me. Too much coffee.
but there's PTSD, there's depression, there's anxiety. Compared to the general population, I think it's something like 30% of first responders develop these conditions with what I stated, compared to 20% of the general pop, just us. So that's a significant difference. That's 10% more, and there's less of them than us.
Wait a minute. Is that accurate? Are you sure? I might have to double check your stats on that.
Double check me.
Okay. Let me see. Hold on, I'm doing this. I think I saw something similar, but I wanted to make sure we were citing the right numbers.
Right source.
Yeah, because you know how in the comments, you didn't do this. Okay.
Right.
So according to a study by the National Institute of Health and let's see, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. Did I say that right? All right, I got way too much coffee.
So. SAM HSA. So
there you go.
There you go.
First responders and mental health. How can we support this? There's this website here. And we can put this on at the end because this is like
add the links.
Yeah, this is really long, but it's estimated that 30% of first responders develop behavioral health conditions compared to 20% in the general population. That means almost 1 million first responders might need professional support for mental issues, various issues. And hopefully I'm not repeating what you just said. But
you're
again,
basically confirming what I said.
Okay, right. I just want to make sure that because this is something really serious that we're on the same page.
Right. And that's a lot of people. 1 million?
Yeah.
But still, compared to the United States, what are we? 33, what is it? 33 billion? 33?
But no, you went to college. All right. Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to I went to college. Yeah, so did I. I went to art school, but it's still a college, goddammit. Okay.
There you go. We got some college. But I'm telling you, there's a lot. That's a lot of people considering. So when you're talking about specific disorders, they're more prone to 1 million. That's a lot of people.
Right.
That's a lot of people.
PTSD really is a big one.
Yeah.
What I've read, firefighters have a high rate of PTSD. And here we're going to go like throwing statistics and all this other kind of stuff. So I'm sorry in advance. One study said that 21% of firefighters worldwide report having PTSD. And in the US, it's around 15%. For police officers, it's about 17% experience symptoms and 11% meet the clinical criteria for PTSD. Ambulance personnel also have a significant rate, around 11%, also report PTSD symptoms. One of my children is a first responder. They work in the ER and they're dealing with a lot of families sometimes that have to deal with the injury or death of a loved one. There's a lot of times that they have to keep in contact with the family, keep them abreast of what's going on as they're dealing with their trauma of their loved one. And they have to report the not so good news. And hopefully sometimes it's encouraging and happy news. But one of the things that they've had to do recently was to let the family know that their loved one had passed away. And it was more shocking because when they left in the ambulance, they still were in need of medical care, but they were not deceased. I'll put it that way. So they're coming into the hospital thinking one thing, and they had to deliver the news about the topic we never want to talk about. And so you also have the non-first responders that work in the hospital, and this one particularly is within the ER. That takes a toll as well. So I know one of the things that they needed to do was separate from their families when they're talking to other families, because sometimes it's hard to separate it. But that's some of the things that they have to do. And sometimes you find people that, hey, how come you're not with me, in terms of you're distant, you're not here. When you get used to separating yourself from a certain situation, sometimes it's hard to come back, and you do it automatically to where it could
It's
be a
coping
problem.
mechanism.
Yes, absolutely. It is. So that's one of the things that they have to deal with, is a lot. There's also this report from the Kaiser Family Foundation that mentions 11% of career fighter fighters report symptoms of depression, and even higher for female firefighters. And this is just my thing. I don't know how many, like with parents, mothers nurturing, that kind of thing. So if you have a nurturer that's in that type of career, that takes a toll as well. And I don't want to just say it's women, because it's not, it's men or too, because my dad was very a nurturing person. But women, we tend to be more of the nurturers. And I'm
We're
sure
natural nurturers.
and paramedics have 37% reporting symptoms
Of depression?
and
Oh my God, 37%?
yes,
That is
yes.
high.
And non-paramedic EMS have 28%. So it's clear that depression is a common problem among first responders. What came to mind when we were preparing for the show was, what about the dispatchers? They're the ones that are on the front line. They get the call.
I was going to say that because they are the true first responders.
Oh, for sure.
They are the ones who have to assess the situation quickly.
Yes.
And
Yep.
dispatch the appropriate people. And a lot of them go through depression as well, and PTSD. And I just wanted to go back really quickly before we get really deep into depression, because a lot of people say PTSD and you should know it, that post-traumatic stress disorder. But I just wanted to put, if you don't know what it is, say we're dealing with somebody who's just heard the word but doesn't really understand like the definition of what that is. There are 5 signs of PTSD, and it's if you have like vivid flashbacks of feeling trauma that's happening to you. So a lot of people who are in the military or who are in the police force, when you have to deal with the death of someone, or maybe seeing somebody that has been unalive, I should say, instead of saying the other word, or has decided to take their own life, or just seeing very traumatic things, or going onto a scene and seeing a child in certain situations, seeing things like that, intrusive thoughts or images may stick with you. So you may have nightmares, you may have intense distress and real symbolic reminders of certain traumas. And people in the military, being if you were a part of war, like a lot of them that dealt with when they fought in Vietnam, a lot of our soldiers came back very messed up PTSD and ended up being on a lot of opioids because they could not deal with what they saw over there. They couldn't handle it on a day-to-day basis. So it affected a lot of people. So that's what we mean when we're talking about PTSD and the symptoms of PTSD, what people may be feeling. And people may say that I don't think police officers go through that. Some of them do, especially if they deal with the special victims unit, things of that nature, where you're dealing with very heinous people who deal in child trafficking and child sex stuff and things of that nature. To see, you can only deal with so much. I know I can't. Like we discussed, those things hit me differently. So I can imagine just having to deal with something like that on a daily basis.
Well, that's one of the things with my dad when he was, like I said, he retired a police lieutenant from Oakland, California. But one of the things he couldn't do, and that was dealing with children. He could deal with a lot of stuff, but when it came to children, he couldn't do it. And one of the things that he ended up doing to divert his mind and thinking to other stuff, he was a coach for Pop Warner football. out in
Right.
Oakland back in the early 80s, 70s, and all that kind of stuff. The Oakland Dynamites. He
Right.
was a coach for years, and he would come home tired, but then he changed into the coaching uniform and or whatever, and he'd go out there and coach those kids. It's similar to how somebody would do with gardening. He was
Right.
able to completely detach himself
Right.
from that and see something better. So he was doing that was his saving grace.
Agree with you. And I wanted to say something with regards to people
Sure,
like that, like your dad. It's
sure.
when you see, he's probably seen a lot of children in compromising positions, a lot of youth, a lot of
Right.
male youth that have been caught up in gang culture or drug culture or being abused and things like that. So I think it's very important and very commendable that even though that was his way of escaping what he saw, he was also giving back and pouring into young people, which a lot of times sports can save some of these young men and these young women.
Oh, yeah, because I remember asking him at some point, I'm not really into sports. Have any of them at the time gone off and done other things? So he knew of some of the children that some you can't save them all, but
Can't
then
save
he
them all.
knew
Yep.
of some that had gone on to do professional sports or had gone off to college, and that was their saving grace to get them into college. Usually they start off Pop Warner football, they get into
Right.
high school, and they go from there. And they're learning the skills and how to take orders and give orders and just yes, exactly. So that was good for him to see because he was around destruction a lot of the times. And
Exactly.
again, it takes a certain person to want to do that. And one of the things you and I had talked about as well was when he, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating because he is old, so I'm going to repeat myself. But we learned usually when people come home, hey mom, hey dad, how was your day? Until you become teenagers and they don't exist anymore. But we learned not to say how was your day because again, the type of job, and he might have had a great day, but our thing was, hey, dad's home. Hey, dad, that kind of thing. We just did not say that because of I don't know what he dealt with.
Did your mom tell you to do that, or was it just a natural thing that you picked up?
It was a
Not to talk about
natural
it.
thing, but then sometimes, depending on his mood, if I said, hey, how was your day? And he told me how his day was, it's shit.
So
So
it
it
was
was
for
like,
next time,
and
right?
just keep it pushing.
Keep it pushing.
Yeah. And when he would act overly sensitive in terms of where are you going? What are you doing? You don't need to be here. You don't need to go there. I knew that, okay, some shit popped off and he just ain't telling me.
Right.
And, when I got to be 18 and I started going out and driving and, back when we were coming up, you couldn't wait to get 16 because then you got your driver's license and you were gone, but then he didn't like keep me locked down, but because of what he knew what was out there, and that wasn't a life or world that I was familiar with, he would just tell me certain things to be mindful of. And then after a while, it was like, well, goddamn, you done scared the shit out of me. Now I'm gonna just stay in the house. I just learned not to tell him where I was going.
Being young, you get adventurous. You like, that ain't gonna happen to me.
Being young and stupid sometimes is not what it's all
saving
cracked up to be.
grace.
Yes, yeah. What they say, God watches out for babies and fools.
Babies and fools.
But
fool a lot of times.
But it did give me heightened awareness that I think the average person who doesn't have a first responder in their household does. I mean, I remember going to the restaurant, or we could just go in like a burger joint, and we're sitting down eating, and then all of a sudden my dad will say, the person to your right in the far corner, what are they wearing? I don't fucking know. I'm eating my burger. Where is this coming from? But what he did was he taught us to always be aware of your surroundings. So even to this day, I'm still looking at that person in the corner, the person next to me.
She is. Oh, that's another thing, another KC thing. When we go anywhere to eat, she has to be facing where she can see everything. She wants to see the door. She wants to see everybody who comes in. So I think I sat in that corner in that seat once. But she was uneasy the whole time because her back was against. And ever since then, she has to see the whole environment.
Yeah. And I'm assessing what escape routes. Have I ever had to use any of this?
no. But she's very prepared.
But again, just being around that, I had to. I mean, he would bust you out. And his thing is, you need to know if something, and honestly, if something happened, I probably would have a heart attack and fucking die right on the spot. But like, oh shit. Okay.
Literally.
But yeah, like I said, when we go hiking, if something is out of kilter and one of the guys that we were hiking with, he jumped for something, I took off running.
She took out. Now you want to see these little legs run? Boy, boy,
Oh
boy.
my God. So it's funny, like Bambi trying to drink water along the brook and then they hear something.
Very timid and be like, oh,
Yeah. But
time to go.
that was how we were raised. When my kids are like, God, Mom, you're so scary. But it's just how it was.
Do you feel at any point now, being older and understanding the signs of depression, do you think your dad showed signs of being depressed at any point?
I know he did. It's because as he was not so much out in the field, his depression, I would think, was twofold. It came from once he started trying to climb the corporate ladder. That's when depression set in, because there was tons of roadblocks placed in front of him constantly. Okay. So that was one of the things that he had to deal with. And then the death of my brother. So he's still working. He's still trying to maintain and move up the ladder. And then once he got to a certain point in his career, the glass ceiling happened. So he's trying to break through that, whether it be on his own merits or legally having to do it. And that could be a topic for another time, of course. But then he got to a certain point, and then my brother passes away. And then you're still dealing with your job. You're still dealing with the same traumatic issues that you're dealing with, but now you've got your own issues that you're dealing with. So whatever he was able to suppress on the job now has become exacerbated because of personal issues. And how do you maintain that? You start to medicate yourself. And there you go. Then it's just like a vicious circle. And again, when we talk about where first responders really need to have that outlet, that, what is it, the therapy that goes with it. My father was a proud Black man. He's not going to go and sit and talk about anything. It just wasn't going to happen. So hopefully, oh, for sure, I'm not going to go and sit down and tell somebody my business. I'll deal with it myself.
Correct.
So hopefully a lot of the newer people out here, my kids included, they do have a therapist to go to. It was suggested when my other child became a first responder that check in with the therapist, whether it be every 3 months, do it every quarter, whether there's something going on or not. You still need to check in and get a habit of doing that, because even things you throw by the wayside, now that starts to pile up and you don't realize that it's coming out. It comes out in certain ways. So definitely you need to do that.
I agree. But do you feel that even though we're in a different time, we're in a different era, different generations are coming up through the ranks of first responders, and they technically have way more tools or therapies that are out there that are made available because of the past and other things that have gone on, still the stigma is you still don't have a lot of people who take advantage of those tools that are put in place for them.
You're right. They don't, because again, it goes down to, I can handle myself. I'm not weak. But if I'm going to seek help, I'm weak. Or I'm going to sit down and talk to you. What are you going to tell me different than what I'm going through? You're not there with me. I can work it out. And then we still have that older generation. Sometimes when you grow up hearing certain things, you don't go tell nobody your business.
Right.
You still don't. So that could be an issue in itself. So I want to say that things are definitely changing because I do believe they are. They make things a lot more readily available to you. I'm only mentioning this particular one because this is the one that I'm familiar with, which is what is it? It's called Help. As I'm talking, the name just left my head, but they have a lot of those therapy sessions that
Okay.
you can have, whether it's on the phone, whether it's FaceTime.
Okay.
Yes, and I always thought it was health, but it's HELP, Better Help. And I'm mentioning that because that's the only one that I'm familiar with. But they have where you can talk on the telephone, you can do FaceTime, you can pick the type of person that you want to talk to. If you're an older person, somebody closer to your age, female, you name it. You've got a menu of how you want this person to be that you want to talk to. So you're not going into the typical office, you're laying on the couch and they're going to do the psychobabble on you. So now you are in control of who you talk to. So they're making it more accessible and they're trying to make it more mainstream because it is a problem.
I would say that I'm not to say that they need it more, but I would think because they deal with it more on a daily basis, they have
That's their job. Absolutely. Called for.
you're predisposed more often to things
Absolutely.
that are going to affect you on your mental. But I do understand the stigma of it all as well. That sometimes people, if they knew that, oh, you're seeking therapy, then they might view you as being weak or, well, maybe I don't want to be coupled with you because you stressing out or
Yeah.
I can't trust you to be on your job if you're going sitting on the couch all the time. So this job for you? Can you handle it?
Yeah, exactly.
Types of things.
If you can't handle it, then what the hell you going to do for me?
Right.
Which is totally, you want somebody getting help so they can be strong for you. Because again, it goes to that thing when you're on the plane. What do they tell you? The oxygen mask comes down. You put it on first. Then you can help that other person.
Right. But these are things that I think they deal with. That's why it's so low that people actually don't go and seek the help because of the stigma of if somebody finds out, are they going to look at me different?
Is it in my file?
Is it going to hurt or hinder me from progressing, moving up the ranks and things of that nature? So I definitely
and I'm sure it has.
it.
I'm sure somebody has a story out there to where that has actually happened. You don't just make up these things in your head. Well, maybe sometimes you do, but something like that, it wouldn't surprise me.
Right. Right. But I definitely, if there's any first responders that are listening to this podcast, please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are about, especially getting therapy or how it's viewed where you work or who you deal with. Is it viewed positively or negatively? Because it has to change. And you can't have people who are helping people, but they need help themselves.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Like a doctor telling me to lose weight. I'm obese, but you walking in here 300 pounds and you're the doctor.
Smoking.
Help yourself first before you try to help me. So yeah, hopefully that will change. Let's go on to, there are people also as first responders that are at a higher risk of, how can I say this, taking their own lives.
Yes.
I say it that way, that they take their own lives. They have a very high risk of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the sad part. According to some studies, firefighters and police officers are more likely to die by tragedies. I mean, let's just say it, suicide than on duty. Specifically, police officers are 54% more likely to have the demise by that than non-law enforcement personnel. 24% of them have had those thoughts. For emergency medical workers, there's 25% more likely to attempt this. And those in typical occupations as EMTs, we keep picking on the same group. At the same time, it's across the board. These are the first string people that everybody knows about, but it's also the people behind the scenes. I would also be very interested, knowing what I know now, to know about how dispatchers deal. Because again, like officers, firefighters, they don't know what's going on necessarily until it's dispatched.
Right.
So they're the first line of defense that comes out.
Absolutely. And they're all because there is a shortage of people who do these jobs: dispatchers, police officers, EMTs, firefighters. So it causes a lot of the people who are active duty, they have a lot of opportunity for overtime. But you say it's good because it's good money, but in the long run, it can wear you down,
Yes.
you out, having to do double times and triple times and overtime all the time and dealing with stressful situations. So sleep deprivation, anxiety, insomnia, it's going to take a toll on you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the things too, I know, like with firefighters, people are pretty much happy to see them because why? They're putting out fires.
Right.
So now you are going into a situation where you hear, and let's just be real, they always say, fuck the police. You got all
Right.
that shit going on. And I was talking with some folks that obviously I know that are in law enforcement, not just my family, but other folks too. And believe it or not, I know we paint a broad brush to paint across a lot of things, but one of the things I was told is that they didn't have that problem necessarily as a law enforcement officer, because you just really have to realize that the people that need your help, they also deserve respect.
Right.
It's a traumatic situation that you might be going to, and coming in, you have to assess the situation and learn how to de-escalate it. Meaning, when they see that uniform, it don't matter who's in it. When they see that uniform, you're thinking about all the stuff you've heard and you've
Right.
seen on
Right.
TV. I don't need to say all the names because we all know them.
Right.
And just giving somebody their respect when you walk through the door, that goes
A long
along.
way.
It really
Yeah.
does. And again, there might be somebody that is an asshole and you got to fight fire with fire, so to speak. But at the same time, once they see, okay, you know what? I don't like the situation I'm in. I don't like the uniform you're in, but you are respecting me. I still might not like you, but
Right.
you're respecting me. That goes a long way. It really does.
Just being the fact that if you acknowledge that you see them and you understand them,
Yeah.
you open the door to a better conversation or a better outcome, I should say.
Right. Right. So not all people in uniform are bad, and the ones that you think are good might not always be good. But
Right.
again, they also are going into a situation where they are already hated. That's a mental, a mind when you're walking into something like that. You got to be careful.
Right.
Really be careful.
They do have to do a lot of mental gymnastics.
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about the police officers. Firefighters, they deal with a lot as well, because not only do they deal with fires, but guess what? When you call 911 and you have an emergency at your home, they typically come before the ambulance. It's like they're assessing the situation first. So the true first responders on the scene are like firefighters.
Yes.
First and
Yes.
foremost. And then just them having to deal with going back to fires, knowing that maybe having to save someone's life, maybe having to leave someone because you can't get to them. I just imagine the stress, just imagine the mental part of knowing that you were sent to this home or sent to this building, and there are people that you can't get to. And if you try to get to them, putting your own life at risk. So you have to possibly leave someone because you can't get to them. To know that you did that or you were responsible for that, that could be a mental thing for you. I can't, or what if you hear them screaming? Things of that nature. So I try to thinking about it right now as I'm talking about it. That would be a lot for me. I know I couldn't do that job for sure.
One of the things as far as what is taxing, and again, to camp onto what you were saying, they're constantly exposed to traumatic events, situations. Right. They see things most of us can't even imagine. And some in a day, like accidents, shootings, natural disasters, and even more. And like I said, sometimes your job is an 8-hour to 12-hour shift. So you might be seeing multiple things in a day. Right. So this repeated exposure to trauma can lead to chronic stress and eventually mental health disorders. And I was complaining when I was in HR, and I was like bitching about some stuff that was going on a daily basis there, but I was able to turn it off as much as possible.
But yeah, those things that's crazy. what you're talking about is crazy. So I can definitely see when I was explaining what I was explaining with regards to firefighters or police officers, why we were talking about ending their lives. I can imagine how, if you're being exposed to that a lot of traumatic situations or situations that you felt could have had a better outcome, and maybe you're blaming yourself for the outcome or what didn't happen or what you weren't able to do. I can see how that could possibly play with your mind and make you want to potentially, if you're seeing that a lot or that experience has happened to you more than once, where you may consider ending your life.
And on top of that, and even if it's not to that degree, we hadn't even talked about alcoholism. And,
Right.
everybody has different shifts. I remember as a kid going off to school, my dad would come home, and right when I'm going to school, he would have been home. So you're talking 8 o'clock would be his 5 o'clock for everybody else doing the 9 to 5, and opening up a beer and having a beer with the bowl of cornflakes. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just maybe not to that
Beer and
degree,
cornflakes.
but really you want to let go of the day, and you
Right.
start doing that, and just to have
And
your
beer is
peace.
light. She's being nice. Some of these Mickey Fickies ain't just hitting the beer, the Modelo. They hitting something else. The Corona Modelo ain't gonna help them.
Oh,
Yes.
Modelo.
Right. We're being the Budweiser. A lot of Budweiser back then. Corona now, Modelo, and all that stuff. But yes,
Right.
we're being very structured or very easy with what we're saying. That some of them take a lot harsher alcohol as well as other substances to cope as a coping.
Wasn't a party to any of that, so I
Right.
that part I can't speak on. Because
Right.
I don't know about that. Seriously, I
That's
don't.
just my watching other stuff.
Okay. All right. All right, Dora the Explorer. You gone with your bad self.
Right. But it's just, there's the culture in this profession it may seem discouraging with regards to seeking help because they have that tough guy image and the appearance of being weak, but it's really needed for these types of individuals, I believe. And I really think that there should be some extra help or encouragement or something that they could come up with that could possibly help these individuals who dedicate their lives and could possibly lose their lives for their profession. There should be other things that are available to them that they could take advantage of or that should be required. Right? I think it should be a requirement and it shouldn't be frowned upon because it's a requirement to get help.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I know we are beating a dead horse and so on, but I think it's needed. As we stated before, a lot of people don't do it because of the image factor, the repercussions that could possibly happen, and self-degradation. They're like, God, what's wrong with me? How come I can't do this? What's going on? So that's something within itself.
But what if you made it a perk? What if it became a perk? What if it became a part of your requirement to move forward? You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, but I don't know
baking
how
it into the system. I'm just thinking on the fly as we're talking.
Yeah.
If it's required for everyone, then you can't point fingers at that point if it's a requirement for everyone. If it's a requirement for you to move forward in your career, if it's a requirement for you to every quarter, like you were saying, every quarter to sit down on someone's couch, it needs to be a part of your evaluation.
And
Have
you know
done
what?
it across
Since
the board?
I'm not in that field, and it very well might be.
Right.
It might
guys
be.
let us know. Is it?
Things
have changed a lot.
I really don't know.
Right.
And what are the matrix involved to be able to say, okay, you did it? Do you need a note from your doctor? Because that's not going to happen because of HIPAA. So where does that go? So
these are all great questions. We're posing. We're trying to come up with some type of solution. We're not a part of the police force, but if I was
absolutely
working
not
in HR,
scary enough.
If it was something that I could add to the conversation, if this was lacking, again, you guys let us know. Is any of this what we just discussed? Is that a part of being a first responder? Or are these therapies? Are they requirements? These going to get evaluations every once in a while to make sure you're okay, not to stigmatize you, but to make sure you're okay.
And one of the other things that, secondly, what I'm thinking is that maybe there needs to be a cultural shift within the professions. And again, here we go. I'm stepping on what you just said, but it's like, again, trying to make it not such a demonized kind of thing.
Right.
You know?
Actually, I agree with that. It has to be something out there. And maybe it is. Like you said, you got to talk to your children.
Yeah.
Let us know.
They'll be like, we're out here saving lives. Why you want to know that? I'm sorry.
I can see one of them because,
Oh,
I
God.
can see it.
We're saving lives here. And then at one point they were saying, guess what, Mom? I could put you on a 5150 hold. I'm like, I wish a blankety blank would.
I got you on. I can easily remove you from some paperwork. Keep
Man,
playing with me.
man.
Keep playing with me.
Oh, God. And then one day, one came and just knocked on the door and scared the living shit out of me because it was, I go, what the fuck is your problem knocking on my door like that? What are you talking about, Mom? And then I could see the little snicker. I said, you're taking your job a little fucking far, ma'am. Knock like a regular person.
Or be banging on my door like you know.
The po busy.
He's raised in a different era.
I better hear knuckles on the door, not a fucking fist. You know, and that's how I heard it. It was like, yeah, no, stop, you little overachiever. Don't be doing that shit at home.
Well, let's talk about this as a community, as us in the community. How can we support first responders? What are your thoughts on that?
We can start being maybe a little bit more understanding and empathetic. And again, sometimes, and it's a case by case, because not every first responder, a law enforcement person is an asshole. Correct. And I'm not just saying that because I've got children in there, because my children can be assholes. But seriously, they do try to be aware of the heightened issues that are surrounded them in the uniform. And I even tried to look at them differently. And I haven't had any reason to have any issue. But then again, I know people that didn't have any reason to have an issue and shouldn't have had it. And then they end up having an issue anyway, if you know what I'm talking about. Right. I think across the board, everybody just has to. Can we all just get along? I know that's so stupid. I know some people will be like, shut the fuck up.
Let's just be honest. We're in the era of defund the police. Our era was F the police, fuck the police. So
yep,
we've gone through a lot of different stages of law enforcement and how us as a community interacts with law enforcement. Me, myself, like KC, I don't have any law enforcement in my family. Well, in my immediate family. My uncle was a retired OPD.
Oakland Police Department.
Oh, yes. He retired from there, ex-military, and then he also was head of security for United Airlines, retired from that. So his whole career has been a part of either military or some type of enforcement. But, I haven't had any, even back then when we had F the police and we responded a certain way, I still, me personally, not the people around me, I'm just talking about me personally, I hadn't had negative engagement with police in my, but yeah,
they show
me.
Okay.
Right. But no, I haven't had any negativity, even in my earlier years up until now. The interaction has been pretty good. So I don't come from, we used to say it because of a song, and then they put it in your mental. But as I got older, when I had to look back, I was like, I really haven't had a lot of negativity that happened with me. It was a mental shift for me being an adult from when being a young person and being engrossed in culture and seeing things on the news or, in certain neighborhoods, but it not really affecting me personally, but seeing some things and just reacting to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're talking about for sure. Absolutely. Hopefully you can get the help that you need when you need it, and only when you need it. That would be the takeaway that I would have, just knowing that there are options out there. And you want to do preventative maintenance. By the time you're thirsty, it's almost not that it's too late, but you don't want to get thirsty. You want
You
to
don't
be
want to
able
get
to where you
you don't
can't.
want to be dehydrated. Keep yourself just
Exactly.
hydrated.
So, I mean, that's what I have in order to summarize my thoughts on the mental health and the first responders, for me.
I agree. Definitely, like I said, I'm not going to repeat it. But I said earlier, I want to find out, does it exist? If it doesn't, is that something that can be added to their program, baked into the system of first responders, like making it a requirement? If you want to move forward, you have to have gone through some type of therapies or some type of trainings that will help you cope better. That would be my thing with regards to that. And with regards to community, it just needs to be a mind shift that not all police officers are bad. Not all firefighters or first responders or people that you come in contact with, even dispatchers. Sometimes they have bad days too. They are human. And it's a lot for them to deal with on a daily basis too. Sometimes you need to, if you're not doing it, give a little grace sometimes to some people. You don't know what their circumstances are, and that they've taken on these types of responsibilities, which is a lot to deal with. So I would definitely say that. Hopefully you guys will let us know if you're a first responder, dispatcher, police, firefighter, EMT. Let us know what you think about this topic with regards to mental health. Is it something that, even if you are, let us know, is there something that you guys are required to do? Is it something that you feel should change or should be taken away? We would love to hear from people who are in this industry. It is an important part of our everyday living. So we really would like to hear from you guys and let us know. That's all we have. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation with us.
I did. But then again, I
I did
was
too.
running off at the mouth either. Also, so
But I wanted her to, you guys, because Casey comes from, she has a lot of people in her family who are they've dedicated their lives to helping the community. So I definitely wanted her to speak more than me, because I don't have them in my family, not in my immediate family. I got other things in my immediate family.
And I got some that are on the other side of the law too, but we're not going to talk about those.
Right. Hopefully this was an enjoyable conversation. Let us know, like I said, in the comments. Again, rate us if you're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Rate us with the stars. That lets the algorithm know, that lets these platforms know that you enjoyed what we're bringing to you guys. And of course, you're going to see this video on YouTube. So please hit the like button. Please hit the share button. Yes. Share, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of this whole conversation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you
for rocking out with us in this conversation. And like always, we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Tiki Barber here. I remember those grueling practices, pushing through fatigue and striving for greatness. Well, that's the same dedication My Herba puts into their supplements. They understand the body's needs. My Herba takes a holistic approach to wellness. Whether it's their CMOS, immune defense, or even sleepy time, they have an option for you. Let My Herba make the best you with code BARBER10 for 10% off at thefitnesscollectif.com.